Galatians 3, verses 15 through 18, we're going to hit today. Reading again from the New Living Translation. Paul writes here, and this, heading, this section in New Living is called The Law and God's Promise. So he starts off, dear brothers and sisters. In the Greek, that's just brothers, but they put it into brothers and sisters here. Here's an example from everyday life. So Paul's going to give him he's going to break it down for him, give him an example, a metaphor, if you will. Just as no one can set aside or amend an irrevocable agreement, so it is in this case. Verse 16, he goes on, God gave the promises to Abraham and his child. The original there says, seed, also in some different translations to a seed. And notice that the scripture doesn't say to his children, or in some cases it may say seeds, as if it meant many descendants. Rather, it says to his child, and that, of course, means Christ. So Paul's saying what God was even doing in that moment through Abraham was through Christ. He says, this is what I'm trying to say. The agreement God made with Abraham could not be canceled 430 years later when God gave the law to Moses. So God made the promise to Abraham. 430 years later becomes the law to Moses. God would be breaking his promise. For if the inheritance could be received by keeping the law, then it would not have been a result of accepting God's promise. But God graciously gave it to Abraham as a promise. We're going to stop right there. We'll pick back up and continue on with these verses. But basically, Paul is breaking it down for them once more, just helping them to remind them of their history, that though they were not Jewish believers, but that they would have read the law and read the scriptures, read the Torah, and understood that God gave this promise to Abraham, that the promise would be found there, and that it was by faith that he received that. And so he said God didn't break his promise by giving the law to Moses and say, now this is the way you're going to receive the promise. The inheritance did not come by keeping the law. He gave it to Abraham as a promise. The law did not fulfill the promise. Only Christ fulfilled that promise. Again, Paul's making another point here that the law does not fulfill the promise of God. It does not fulfill our righteousness requirement with God. Only Christ can do that, and only Christ did do that. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. You're breaking these verses down with me here. Like, subscribe, and share, and leave a comment.